Hey guys, I'm going to go through with you the Quiz 2 review PowerPoint that you need to do for today. This is just to help you with your Quiz 2 that you have tomorrow on Thursday. My goal is for everyone to make as high of a grade as possible. This will be quick and short. There's just three big things that I want to go through with you. The first thing is you need to understand the somewhat complex relationship between mercantilism, the Navigation Acts, and salutary neglect. So mercantilism was the overall policy, the British policy that made sure that the colonists worked for the British. That's how it was set up. It was called a parent colony relationship. The parent country for the North American colonies was the British. And so the colonists in North America worked for the British Empire, for the British government. And what these guys wanted was they wanted all of the British colonies raw goods, such as tobacco or sugar. So then they could take those raw goods, turn them into manufactured goods, and then sell them to other colonies. So basically, you had to sell to the British, so then the British could sell you back a manufactured good, and therefore the British Empire makes a lot of money. The way they ensured they did this was through a law called the Navigation Acts. And this law stated that the colonies could only trade with the British. Even if France or Spain was offering more money, the colonists could only trade with the British. Now, this actually leads to the most complicated part, which is salutary neglect, which was just a weird enforcement of the laws. So the British had this Navigation Act on the books, it was a law, but they didn't really enforce the law. Think of it kind of like the speed limit that's posted. Police officers don't really enforce the actual speed limit. Usually you can go a couple of miles out of hour over. As long as it's nothing egregious, like more than 10 miles an hour over, you won't really get pulled over. And that's how salutary neglect worked as well. Salutary neglect was basically they were relaxed on these navigation acts. So if they did sell a little bit to the Spanish or to the French, then the British wouldn't enforce it too hard unless it was just absolutely egregious. So therefore, this Navigation Act was on the books, but it wasn't fully followed because of salutary neglect. So those two things were kind of working against each other. The next thing you need to know about is the transatlantic slave trade. This is also called the Middle Passage right here. And this is the trade of Africans that were captured being taken to the Americas, North, South, and Central America. Most of them were taken to South and Central America. But those that were taken to North America were mainly because of the big tobacco fields in Virginia and the big rice plantations in South Carolina. So that's where they were going in North America. And the racial system that was established, or the slave system that was established, was all racially based. Okay, so they established that racial caste system to make sure that Europeans were on top. People that had a European parent and maybe a Native American parent were kind of in the middle, and then enslaved people were at the bottom. They ensured that this would stay relatively pure by making sure that no one intermarried with one another. And then the final thing that you need to know is making sure you understand how to read a document by and being able to answer a multiple choice question. This is something that I saw a couple people really struggle with. So I just wanted to talk about really quickly. So we're going to look at two questions. I'm not going to show you the answers. I will let you know both of these questions are on your quiz too. So the first question says, the events described in the excerpt most directly reflect which of the following developments. The first thing that you need to do every single time you get a multiple choice question is read the question, all right? First thing you do is read the question because some questions you are not going to need the excerpt at all. For example, if you look at number 2, it says George Whitfield is an example of what? I don't think that you're going to need the document or the source to be able to answer this question. This just comes straight from your notes. So it's possible that you have enough historical knowledge to read the question and answer it without needing anything else. So the first thing you want to do is read the question. The next thing you want to do is you want to read all the answers. So first thing, read the question. Second thing, read all the answers because you want to be able to try to eliminate any question or any answers that you know are not true based off of your historical knowledge. So if it says like the events described in the excerpt most directly reflect to which of the following developments, and it talks about, let's say, World War I. Well, we haven't talked about World War I yet. So you know that's not the right answer. So now you're only having to work with 3 answers. It allows for you to limit your focus on what this is being talked about. Then the next thing you're going to want to do is read this source right here. All right. So it says Nathaniel Cole, a farmer, describing going to hear Reverend George Whitfield preach in Middletown, Connecticut, 1740. You should see one big key thing in here, which is Reverend George Whitfield. You're looking for any clues that will help you answer this question. So you know that since this is about Reverend George Whitfield, you should be able to use historical knowledge to be able to pick out this is about a great awakening. Even though you're not reading anything like this, and even though if you go read this entire thing, it's not going to say this is about the first great awakening. We know that George Whitfield is about the first great awakening. And so because of that, that's really what the question is. Can you be able to pick out George Whitfield and know that this is about the first great awakening? Because even though you're not going to see the answer right now, you should know that this is about the first great awakening. And then you would find the answer that says that. Again, for the second question, you may not even need to read this at all. You could probably just read this and it says, if he's an example of a preacher in the first great awakening, you should just know that as a straight up definition from notes. All right. Let me see if I have another example. So now you just have an open-ended question that you need to answer. And that open-ended question is, what's the first thing you need to do? And again, the first thing you always need to do is make sure you read the question. All right, that's all I have for you guys. Make sure you're working on quiz 2 review. Have a good day.